Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to another video here on the channel. This week we're talking about wheel spacers for radio controlled vehicles. What exactly is a wheel spacer and what does it do for our performance of our radio controlled cars, buggies, and whatever we decide to use them in? Well, the way we're going to do this is we're going to break it down by looking at exactly what these things look like, how they were essentially installed, and what kind of advantages and disadvantages we get out of them from a performance perspective. So let's break right into it and start off by taking a look at exactly what a wheel spacer looks like. Well, there it is. This is the spacer. So you can see the stock component here on the bottom, and you can see the new aftermarket with the spacer. The distance between what you see all the way where this ends to this nut is the length of that spacer. That's what we are gaining in width per side. So twice this distance is the overall increase of the track width. Now I got lucky and a buddy of mine who was nice enough to source these parts, figure out how they work. It was very simple. There's simply an Allen key head inside here. I don't know if we'll get a good shot of that, but you can believe me and trust me that there's an Allen key head that you just have to unfasten. Then it drops this pin. All that set screws doing is holding that pin in place. Once that pin is released, you can push it out of the way, pull out the spacer, and put in your factory component or vice versa. So that's how that works. It's very simple to get onto the shaft of your radio control vehicle. Now what you gain is from the distance there all the way to the nut, and of course that nut is something that goes right into your wheel, and this allows us to transfer the torque from the car to the tire. This is a very common 17mm hex that you'll find in most 1/8 scale buggies. So the biggest thing that we gain from this is we're not going to be grinding away our tire. What we had a problem with is this component here, that nut as well as that screw head was actually making contact with our tire, grinding it away as it rotates. And you can see even in the rear I was getting an issue like that as well. You can see the component here has some ground marks in it, and on the other side it's even a little bit worse. So those now are eliminated, and you can see how far away that rim is from that component. So that's the distance that we gain. The rear is already clearly done. So this is ready to rock once that tire is installed. Now that we know exactly how those spacers install into our radio control vehicles, what kind of advantages are we getting from these? Well, the biggest thing that we're able to get is a width increase of our track stance. So the track width of our vehicle is going to increase, and that's essentially the center of the tires, the width between the left and the right front tires. That can be noted as our track width there. And the biggest performance advantage that we get comes from the ability that we have to corner the vehicle, and as you're going through those corners, we're going to get an increase of stability. That wider stance in corners is going to allow us to reduce the amount of understeer that we get with the radio control vehicle, and this is going to help with the cornering ability of the vehicle. Another area of performance that we're able to get out of a wider track stance is the ability for the car, if it does get a little loose and go sideways, it will not roll over as easily or as quickly. That wider stance will keep those tires planted for a little bit longer in order to get that car slowed down. This can be very advantageous to us when we end up lose control of the vehicle and we don't want to go and run out there to pick it up, flip it back over, and continue on again. Besides, who wants to run out there on the track or wherever you're running your radio control car and flip the car back over after it has flipped? It's just a complete waste of time, and we can minimize that through the use of these wheel spacers. Another advantage that we get from widening that track stance or the track width of our radio control vehicle is the appearance. A wider radio control vehicle, or any vehicle for that matter, just looks a lot better. It's got that more sporty edge to it with that wider stance. It looks aggressive, and the performance that you get is definitely aggressive as well. So that's the third advantage that we have. And the fourth advantage that we get with our wheel spacers, or increasing our track width, is based on the wheel itself. Now, you can see the difference between the diameters of both of these wheels. The 1/8 scale buggy wheel is a little bit larger in diameter than the 1/8 scale on-road wheel. And obviously, the manufacturer of the on-road tire did this on purpose. it is a lot easier to reduce the inertia in the wheel in order to gain some significant performance factors of this specific tire and the radio controlled vehicle. However, I want to apply and use these types of tires on my buggy, but I will not be able to do so without the use of those spacers. Those spacers are going to allow the tire to get away from components that are within the steering, so I do not actually make contact. I actually took a bunch of plastic off the rim because it makes contact as it steers and grinds away the rim. So this will get me further away from those components and allow me to fully utilize these tires on the buggy. Now that we know the advantages of using wheel spacers to widen our track width of the vehicle, what are the disadvantages of using these components? Well, one disadvantage of using these spacers happens to be torque steer. Now, torque steer is something that occurs because the tire is going to be at a certain width away from the pivoting point. And as you apply more torque to that wheel, it causes the wheel to want to rotate around its pivot point, which in theory is going to cause it to steer. Now, our radio control vehicles use servos to steer, so we're not going to be able to actually feel this difference, but it's going to be up to that servo to deal with what it's feeling and maintain control by applying the necessary amount of servo torque to control both of those tires and keep us tracking where we wish to track. Now, the reason why I say that, even though it's kind of masked by the whole servo and we are not able to see it, is because this leads right into our second point. And our second point is that all the components within our steering mechanism, they are going to be further stressed. There's going to be more torque and more force going through all those components that each one of those components are going to have to deal with. Now, for the most part, this is not going to be an overwhelming increase to the components on your common radio control vehicle. It might be a slight bump to your servo, but if you've sourced your servo correctly, odds are you have more than enough torque to handle the small increase or small bump that it's going to have to face. Well guys, I got one more component here to throw on the buggy. I just got to button up this tire, and once that's done, I'm ready to roll and see exactly how it performs. As always, like the video if you do. Don't forget to hit that sub button so that I can see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next one.